So you've got your reeds, they've arrived. First thing you want to do is soak them. Tepid water, a couple of minutes should be fine. If it's very dry in the house, lots of central heating, maybe 5 minutes. And then get them out. Now if we look at a reed that's been blown in and which we like, the tip opening is about 1 millimetre. Maybe I would open that up to 1.5 millimetres. It's not that wide. Obviously a reed you just get straight out of the water, from the buyer, the maker rather, is very open. So that to blow on, it's very resistant. It takes a lot of puff. So the first thing we want to do is not just reach for the pliers and close it down, because when I've set those wires, I've hopefully put them where I want them to go. But the cane dries and the blades open up. In fact, I want them to stay a little bit open. I make them so they will, so that they don't just close up on you. But you can, with a wet reed, before you do anything else and adjust the wires or scrape the reed, you can just take the edges of the reed, either side of the spine, and just close the reed up by hand. Just a little bit, gently down the blade, to see if you can just get that tip looking a bit more like 1.5 millimetres instead of a gaping hole. Then try it on the bassoon. Another thing you'll find is I've set the wires so that when I've sent them, they're snug, but they're not biting into the cane. The cane dries out. Aeroplanes do strange things to reeds. Often the wires are loose by the time you get them. Soak it first for that 5 minutes, and then just make sure with your fingernail that those wires are actually tight enough. They're not just able to move around. You'll also know they're not tight enough because you'll find the reed just vibrates too much in your mouth. Sometimes it'll just sound like a duck. And you can tell there's too many vibrations. So now this is when it's worth having a mandrel, which you can get from most reed making suppliers. A small pair of pliers. You take the first wire, lift it up so that that's vertical like that. Give it a tug, not too hard, and see there is some slack there. Now we can, once we've tugged, we can just turn down, don't keep tugging, and we've maybe gone a quarter turn and we've just tightened that wire a bit. If the second one's loose, I can do it with that as well, because that will stop that flappy feeling and it will control the reed more. Do it too much and you stop the vibrations and it ends up too hard to blow. So it's a little better. It's still a wild crow, that one. That would be my next step. Now then, when you look at the very tip, although I've tried to finish it as neatly as possible, there's still quite a lot of cane on that tip. Some people prefer it much thinner. But before you get the knife out and get too worried about hacking bits of cane off, this is a very, very fine sandpaper. It's wet and dry paper. This is 2000 grit, but 1000 will do. And if it's 1000, just make sure you've used it a bit before you hack the reed to pieces. But this is just to smooth the very tip of the reed. I put the reed on the wet and dry paper at about 30 to 45 degrees, and very gently I rub backwards and forwards, just both sides, and I'm just taking off a little bit of the tip just to smooth it out, and that often will just free the reed up a lot. So with just those steps, making sure the wires are snug, making sure that the opening is right, and if you've got some nice very, very fine sandpaper, don't do it on heavy sandpaper, you'll just rip the tip off. You're just smoothing down those fibres. That may get you to something you now want to blow on for a bit. And just try on the bassoon for long enough to see, well, does this suit you? So don't go doing anything extreme yet. It should have a crow that sounds vaguely like a reed. So that's a brand new reed, quite a soft one. As you heard, it was a little dippy on the E. Don't worry about that, blow on it, because they will blow in, and often they'll harden up a bit. Reeds have that dipping E or C sharp on some instruments at the beginning of their life, and also at the very end of their life when they're dying. You can cut the tip, but don't be too quick on that. Don't be too quick, because if it's going to blow in, it will harden up. So there's just a very few steps you can do straight away, and any questions just email me.